Alright, so we have implemented a lot of features in our post component. But in this video, I want to include a different type of post and to be able to render it. And here I'm speaking about a carousel post. A carousel post in Instagram is a post that has multiple images that you can swipe through, horizontally through them. And you usually see a carousel post by seeing that at the bottom of those images there are a couple of dots that you can see that you can scroll through there. So let's get started and let's implement it in our application. The first thing that I want to do for a carousel post is to change a bit the data structure of our posts.json. Because in case we have a carousel post, we're not going to have one single image for our post data. We're going to have an array. And I'm going to call the key not image but images. And I'm going to transform it into an array. Okay, like this. Do this as well because we're gonna need it. And after we made it into an array, let's copy paste the first image 2 more times, just to have some data to work with. Do it for the first post because it's gonna be easier for you. You're always gonna see it in front of you. And the name of the images is gonna be 1, 2, and 3. Save. Okay, in the first post we don't see anything, in the second one we see and it's working as expected. Let's go in our feed post and see why we lost our images. If I scroll to the content here, we see that this situation we are just rendering one image by accessing it using post.image. Now that we have an array there, we need to conditionally render either this simple image or a list of images, basically a carousel. We could do that here with a question mark operator to check if post.image exists, display this, otherwise display the other one. However, I'm gonna choose not to do it here just because we're gonna have in future multiple types of posts, not just 2. Think about video posts or some other type of post as well. For that reason, I'm going to extract this one into a variable so that we can easily set it. So let's do it like this. Let content equal initially with null. Then if post.image has a value, basically is defined, then we want to assign our content variable with this render component. Save. Now let's take this content and render it inside our double pressable here. So we'll simply render the content by putting the variable here inside the curly brackets like this. Alright, if we look our components with images, if we look at the application, the first one is not working, that's okay, but the other ones are working as they were working before, and also the double press works. Perfect. Now, let's add another if statement here where we check the post type. So, else if post.images is defined, then our content is going to be equal to a carousel component that we will create in a moment, but let's render it carousel. And to this carousel we have to send the list of images. So images equal to post images. All right, let's implement this carousel and give it a go. In the components, I'm gonna create the folder carousel. After we define the index and the carousel tsx, where we do not need that one, back in our feed post, let's import it. Save, and the error should go away. Alright, everything is working, we still do not see anything, but that's because we didn't implement it. Okay, so let's start implementing our carousel. First of all, we are going to receive some properties, which is going to be a list of images. So interface carousel is going to have a property images, and that is going to be an array of strings. And the type of images is an array of strings. So string, and then we specify that this should be an array of strings. Okay, so what are we going to do with these images? We are going to use a flat list that we already are familiar with in order to render this list of images. So let's render the flat list. The data that we want to render is our images that we forgot to destructure yet from our props, images, and the type of props is iCarousel. We send the images to the data. So in the render item, what should happen there? We are going to receive item, which is one image URL. And we want, for every image, we want to simply render one image component, where the source URI is our item that we receive, one image from there. Let's make sure that we import this. And for the style of this image, I'm gonna write the styles right away here. So if we simply say width 100% and the height, instead of height, let's right away say aspect ratio of 1, because that's how we want to render them, with the same width and height. And there is can't find variable image. That's because I have a typo here. It's not image, it's images. Save. And now we are supposed to see our carousel. Will we? Yes, we see something. Not what we expected, but we see 3 images displayed on top of each other. Why is this happening? Because by default, flat list will render everything the same column vertically. We can specify the direction by sending the property horizontal with true, or if you do not specify the value of a property, it defaults true. So I can say horizontal equal to true or simply horizontal. If I save, now I do not see anything, and that is because of our width. Show you that that's because of our width. If I say 100, I see them here, but with 100%, it's not working. And why is that happening? This is happening because our image is displayed in a horizontal flat list. Now, the width of a flat list depends on the width of all the items. But we said that the width of our item depends on the parent, on the flat list. In this case, it's a circular dependency and it doesn't know like what width to take, because flat list depends on the width of items and the item width depends now on the width of a flat list. Another way to display something full width is to take the width of the screen using a hook called const something equal use window dimensions. And this hook will give us that we can import from React Native. This will return us an object with values, height and width. We only need the width here. So if we take this width and pass to the image, then our image will be full width of a screen, because this is our window dimension. And here I can actually simplify this because they have the same name, width and width. All right, so here is our carousel. If I try to scroll horizontally, hey, here it is. Yeah, we are rendering the images horizontally as we expect, but the interaction is not the one that we want, because whenever we release the finger, then we should reset the position to the closest image, basically to center it. To do that, the flat list has a very simple property called paging enabled. If you send this paging enabled, if you set it to true, then if I try to scroll and release, it will always center it. So this is the exact interaction of Instagram carousel. If I don't do it all the way, it moves back. If I do a bit more than half, it will go to the next one. So that's the easiest way how we can implement a carousel. Now the next step would be to show some kind of user feedback of what's happening here. Because if we look at this post, you cannot tell that this is a carousel and you don't know if you need to swipe or not. Instagram displays this as a couple of dots on the bottom of this image that will show the current active page, basically. It's a very, very, very simplified paging that shows the active page. So let's implement that as well. So below the flat list, I will render a container with some dots. So this container, let's say, will have style. This container will be the container of all the dots, and this is going to be the view of one dot. So if I do it one more time, let's add some style here. So what should be the style of one dot? It should have a small width like 10. Aspect ratio, we can go with 1 to be like a square. And if I pass their background color red for you to see, okay, it's there. And to make it a circle, we will specify the border radius. Border radius of 5. Okay, now it's a dot. So if I give the same style to the second view, there it is. We see both of them. Okay, let's play a bit with the style of a container because we want to render them in the same row. I'm going to do flex direction row. And also because I want to render them in the center of a screen, I'm going to do justify content center. Boom, they're here. And because I want to render this view with all the dots on top of the image, I am going to say that the position of this view is absolute and it should be rendered on the bottom of our container. Bottom 0, basically 0 pixels from the bottom. Now something is working, something has broken. So the dots are rendered here on the bottom and on top of the image, but why are they from the left? To debug that, I just want to set background color to blue to see the container. Yes, and the background color blue shows us that the container takes only the space of the dots. To fix that, we can either say with 100% so that the container will take the whole space, and I think that's what we're gonna do. Like this. Or we can leave a container to take the space only of the dots and do, but no, the width is better. So let's remove the background color from there, and we will have to add some margins to these dots. So margin 10 to both of them, and probably 10 is too much. So vertically is okay, but horizontally is not. So margin horizontal 5. Save. Yes, now it's better. And instead of background color red, let's do it with white. All right, so now that we have the styles of these dots properly, I'm gonna remove a second one, and I'm going to render these dots. I mean, the amount of these dots depends on the amount of images in our carousel. If we have 4 images, we need to display 4 dots. So I can simply map through our images, dot map, and for each image, I will return 1 dot. Basically here, we are not interested in the image itself. We just want the same amount of dots as the images. We have 3, I see 3 dots. If I go in our data, and if I add one more here, one more image, then I will see 4 dots there right away. Okay, now because we do not need the image itself, we usually name variables that needs to be there but we do not need with an underscore. So underscore because we don't need it. We need the second variable, which is our index. So let's take the index because we're gonna use this index to highlight one of these dots. First of all, I'm going to send this index as a key property because we need a unique key property for our views. And also, based on this index, I need to see if we need to highlight this dot or not. But before highlighting, we need to keep track of what image are we currently looking at. Is it the first image and we need to highlight the first dot, or is it the second image? All right, for that, you might think that, yeah, we need some state variable. And you are right. Let's do import use state from React. And inside our component on the top here, let's do const. And let's define our state variable here on the top. And we're going to call it active image index. What is the index of a currently visible image on the screen? Set active image index equal use state, and initially we are going to say that the first element is the active one. Now with this active image index, we will conditionally set the background of our dot. How we're going to do that? We're going to do that like this. If the active image index from the state is equal to the index of this dot, then the color should be colors.primary. Otherwise, we can do colors.white. Save. Now, as we can see, the first dot is the highlighted one. However, if we change here to 1, the second one is going to be. If we change it to 2, this one is going to be. And so on. We don't have 4 images, but if we set 3, we see the highlighted last one. Okay, this was the easy part. The hard part is going to be how do we update this image index whenever we scroll through this carousel. This part is not very simple. We are going to use some features of a flat list to implement our active image index. And I'm talking here, if we go to the documentation of flat list, I'm talking here about viewability on viewability items change. This is the function. By sending a function to this property of a flat list on viewable items change, that function is going to be called every time items change on the screen. And what do I mean by items change on the screen? It's either an item goes behind the screen. Basically, if I scroll through things, now the first element is not on the screen. This function is going to be called. If I scroll more, another item appears in the screen. Again, the viewability changes. So if an item goes behind the screen or it appears on the screen, then this callback function is going to be called, and it will give us what items are currently visible on the screen. This callback function works together with the viewability config, and I'm going to talk about in a moment. So let's start by implementing the onViewableItems change to the flat list. OnViewableItems change, let's give the same function with the same name. So let's define this function, const equal data, and let's just have a look at what data do we receive. Console log data. But before that, we should also send, as I already said, the viewability config. This one, the viewability config. Let's search it and let's go here, viewability config. This viewability config is a simple object, const, let's call it with a lowercase v, is a simple object that I'm going to tell you in a moment what it does. First, let's send it to the viewability config here. Here we are specifying the settings of about when should an item be considered visible on the screen, because it's quite subjective when we should trigger this function. And we can adjust 4 parameters here. I'm gonna start with items visible percentage threshold, and I'm gonna say 51. And what does that mean? It means that if more than 51% of an item is visible on the screen, consider that item visible. Let me show you, and it's gonna make a bit more sense. If I'm thinking about the next item, at this moment, 0% of that item is visible on the screen. If I scroll a bit, now probably I see like 2% of that item. Here I see around 25% of the next item. And if it reaches middle of the screen, then here I probably see more than 51% of the next item. So in this case, the next item, like this one with the lake, should be considered visible and not the previous one. So let's have a look at what data do we receive when this callback function is called. So I'm going to enable debugger, Command M debug, and here I already see some items. So as you can see, let me clear everything, and I will slowly scroll and pay attention when we cross the half of a screen mark. Yeah, here we have it. We see the data that we are console logging here contains 3 properties. Changed. Here is an array of items that changed their viewability. We have a viewability config that we are using, basically our object here. And we have the viewable items. Viewable items is an array that contains all the items that are visible on the screen based on our config. And here we see that the index 1 is visible on the screen. So what we can do with that, we can simply say set active image index with that. Instead of data, I will right away destructure, let me see, the viewable items. This is the name of that property. Viewable items, but this is an array. So I'm gonna take the first one and I'm gonna access the index property of that item, because viewable items contains an index here. Also make sure that there is at least one viewable item right now before accessing the first one. So I'm gonna put it here. Okay, everything is fine, but we will have some errors. Let's see. If you have some issues, errors, that's okay. And I'm going to try to trigger that error as well. For example, here I'm going to say to update something very small. Save. And if I save, I see the error. Changing on viewable items change on the fly is not supported. What the hell does that mean? So it means that flat list, we cannot change the function that we send to this property on viewable items change during the execution of our program, like after our component is mounted. And you might think, okay, on viewable items change is this function, and basically we're not changing anything. We're sending the same function. However, the way this works is every time this component re-renders, this function is being recreated. Yes, it has the same code, it will do the same thing, but in the memory, this function will have a new address. Basically, it will be written from scratch. And if I send, like we are re-rendering, we send it here, and the flatlist sees that, oh, I received a different address to a function than before. I do not support this. This is, basically not supported by the flatlist. So we should make sure that we are not recreating this function every time we re-render the component. How to do that? One way to do that is with references. With references, that's a reference. First of all, we import userRef, and we will wrap our function, everything here. I can I will cut the code so that it's going to be easier for you. This function inside useRef should be the value that we want to reference to. And the value is our function. I'm going to simply paste it here. Now, every time our component re-renders, because we have useRef, this function is not going to be recreated. The only change that we need to do is whenever we are using this onViewable items change here, it's not going to be available exactly here. It's going to be available at .current, basically .current value. And by doing this, onViewable item change on the fly, let's do the last reload because we still change something, but after that it should work. So let's do a reload. Okay, it works, but if right now delete something very small in this function, no, not in this function, somewhere different. For example, if I trigger a re-render by setting bottom to 10, save, I will not see that error. If I do bottom to 0, our component re-renders, but the issue is not there. So, okay, that's it. Let's test it right now. If I swipe through these elements here, let's initialize it with 0. Yeah, let's see it in action. Let's see if it works. So if I try to scroll on my emulator, it's pretty the scroll is not working properly. Okay, let's change back here the viewable items, and actually I did a mistake here. It's viewable items.length, and it should be more than 0, not more or equal. So it should strictly be more than 0. Save. And yeah, let's see it in action right now. If I try to swipe through it, the thing is that it's pretty clunky on my emulator, so it works only if you very perfectly try to swipe it. And I think that this is because our carousel is wrapped inside a double pressable. So the issue, as I said, is putting the carousel inside our double pressable. So what I will do is I will cut the double pressable from here, and I'm gonna separately put it only for the image here, like this. And let's close the double pressable, save, closed here, so like this. And inside our carousel, I will put the double pressable on the image itself, not to wrap the flat list inside a pressable. So if I will put the double pressable here, double pressable on the image, what should happen? First of all, we need to import it. Come on, from double pressable. We need to call on double press the toggle like, right? Toggle like. But the thing is, the toggle like function is not here. It's in our feed post. So we are going to send the toggle like, come on, toggle like through properties. Now in our carousel, let's say that, yeah, toggle like, or this should be in carousel, it should be called on double press, because carousel we did it in a reusable way. So it shouldn't be specific to likes, because maybe you want something else on double press. So this is going to be of type function, void. Let's destructure it here. And it should be optional with a default value of an empty function. Now, this on double press, we send it to double pressable here. And back in our feed post, we make sure that the name of a property is not toggle like, but on double press. Save. And now if I try to scroll, now it works much better. And also if I double press, I see the like icon back. So let me try to scroll all the way. And yeah, boom, we see the active index being changed. So as we swipe, the active index is changed. Awesome, we did it. That's it. I mean, that's it from the functionality, but I want to show you something else For example, we want to define the types for this viewability config. The viewability config object will have a type viewability config like this. And this type will be imported directly from React Native, right? Now the trickier part is here with the viewable items. Let's check. Let's press, hold Control or Command and press on the flat list. In your case, you don't have to do that. I'm just going to show you. In some cases, when you do not know the type of something, check what it expects. Here I open the flat list and I will check the on viewable items changed. This function will be called with the info parameter, but it has this type. Viewable items, that's what we are looking at, is of type array of view token. Let's copy array view token, go back to our carousel, and define the type of this info object. The info object will have view items of type array view token. Where is this view token coming? Let's do command. Yeah, it's from React Native. View token React Native. If I save now, we see a different red warning. Argument of type number null is not assignable to parameter set action number. Null is not assignable to number. So it means that this index in some situation might be null. If this index is null, we will set the active image index to 0. We will default it to 0. Alright, so we fixed all the red warnings here. We also do not see any red warnings on the viewability config, and everything is working as it was working before. The cool thing is that right now, if I do some errors here, TypeScript will tell me. And now is also a time to explain you shortly the different viewability config options. Starting from the top, minimum view time, we specify how many seconds should an item be visible on the screen, at least, in order for it to be considered visible. Because if you scroll very fast through the items, you most probably do not want to trigger the item to be visible on the screen. And in that case, if you set the minimum view time to, I don't know, 200 milliseconds, then that's not going to happen. The item is going to be considered visible if it's on the screen for more than 200 milliseconds. The next one is view area coverage percentage. We already know how item visible percentage threshold works. If the item is visible on the screen more than this threshold number, then it's going to be considered visible. For the area coverage, here we are not focusing on the item, we are focusing on the screen real estate, basically on the container of a flat list that displays on the screen. So if the items take more percentage of that area than we specify here, then it's going to be considered visible. In our case, these two properties are very similar and would work similarly because our width of the item and the width of the screen are the same. But in cases when, I don't know, like the items are very, very small, they will never take 100% of the area. In that case, you might need to work with the items visible percentage. In other cases, you might need to work with the area if you want to specify how much of the area the items take. And the last one, wait for interaction. This one will specify that, first of all, the user should interact with a flat list before considering any items visible. Without that, all of them will be considered invisible. Basically, we will not call the onViewable items change function without any interaction. All right, that was a lot, and hopefully it made sense for you. And yeah, with these things like viewable items change, we can accomplish a lot of use cases. We can accomplish this tracking of what is the current item. Later on in the course, we will see how, based on this, we can stop playing a video that goes off the screen. For example, in TikTok, if you swipe to another video, this function will be called and you can stop playing the previous video that is already not on the screen. So that was it for this video. My voice is already cracking, and yeah, we have implemented our carousel with tracking, which is the image, and yeah, feel free to improve it if you have some interesting ideas.